All right. Hey, Marcus.
Oh,
Um, Thanks for agreeing to do this today. So we're just going to explore aspects of your recovery. In a moment, I'm going to get you to introduce yourself. We'll go through some key components, pivotal moments in your recovery. Um, Ask you if there's a message that you'd give your future self if you could wind back the clock. And then anything you'd recommend or suggest or advise or a little message to someone who's going through what they're going through at the moment. So over to you, Marcus. Tell us about yourself. Tell us about your pelvic pain history.
well, so it all kind of started when I'd say really when I hit puberty.
Mhm.
Um, and obviously I didn't know what on earth was going on. And it was very sporadic, I guess is the way of putting it, sporadic. So like a lot of the time there'd be no pain at all growing up. And then I say, yeah, maybe 13 was when I first started to experience post-ejaculation pain. Um, Sometimes bad, sometimes not so bad. Um, and then that went on for years, on and off. Um, and then in what would have been year 10, so that's what I would have been, 15, I suppose, because GCSEs, yeah. So when I was about 15, that's when I had what I remember as the first proper flare up, which was sudden onset of pain one day, which didn't go away for a couple of weeks. And that was the same sort of symptoms that I ended up having later on in life that I'll touch on, but that was post ejaculate pain, sort of pelvic aching, urgency, which I probably still would say is the worst symptom, to be honest. And that, yeah, so that went on for a while. And that was the first time I went to see an actual doctor. At which point they wanted to do when the camera goes where the camera shouldn't go.
Cystoscopy.
That's the one, yeah.
Yeah.
And in the delay of getting it booked in, symptoms started to die down, and obviously being a young man, I'd had it sporadically for a while. I kind of was like, okay, fine. I don't really, it didn't appeal to me. I don't think it appeals to any man to have that happen. But nonetheless, I thought, well, the symptoms are dying down, so we'll just leave it. And then, it was all it was again on and off for a long time. The effect that it had, obviously being a young man, becoming sexually active with other people, it definitely shaped my opinion and excitement towards sexual relations, because obviously the fear and anxiety involved, with like having excruciating pain after having sex kind of takes away from the pleasure of it all. And then around the same time, I made some poor judgments with recreational drugs, which led me to what is now diagnosed as generalized anxiety disorder, which, in my opinion, I think had a big part to play in making it worse, because of my stomach was constantly knotted and just general endorphin levels, etc. And then, yeah, on and off for a few years. And then when I was, what would it have been? So I'm 22 now. So when I was 19, had dinner one night and went for a pee, and like that, it was like a switch turned on, and everything just started to spiral. That was when the urgency, I remember that very, very clearly, actually. We just had Chinese, because I think anyone who's watching and thinks about the symptoms, they'll know that you get into a habit very, very quickly of like everything must be related. And so you remember all the tiny little details and like, was it this, was it that? And so obviously the first thing dietary was the first place I went. Turns out in the end, there was a holistic approach sorting it out, but I don't think, for me, dietary didn't have a big difference. But yes, I had Chinese, went for a pee, finished peeing, Felt like I needed to carry on peeing. And then it didn't get better. It just got progressively worse. I had ups and slight downs. Then other symptoms started to come in, starting to get the sort of post-ejaculate pain all the time. Waking up in the middle of the night, the urgency, I mean, 5 minutes after emptying my bladder, I'd need to pee again. I mean, back pain, groin pain, like everything really, chills, the whole lot. And then, so this was the same time that the anxiety stuff had really started to build up and get worse. And then it was this cycle, obviously you and I, Karl, we spoke about it a lot, the sort of idea like what's causing what. And then, one thing, you get more anxious about the fact that your gentleman's region feels very uncomfortable. And then, so that makes you more anxious. And then so that went on. And then I went to Spain. This was at the beginning of the pandemic, to make it topical. And so I went to Spain for 3 or 4 days, progressively getting worse and worse and worse, to the point where I effectively passed out because I had to have a stopover coming back when I was in Paris. Effectively passed out. I was like completely pale in my bed, felt unbelievably sick, like everything hurt. Obviously, I hadn't been sleeping properly. I tried to get medical attention in Spain and in France, but couldn't. That, to give an idea of how sort of bad it was, it felt like an emergency. I eventually get home, go to the GP. That's when it first gets diagnosed as bacterial urethritis. So that was the first course of antibiotics. Then, so that lasted about a week. There was I should mention that when I was in Spain and when I was in Paris, I was taking probably a packet of ibuprofen and a packet of paracetamol a day, at least, if not more. I was double dosing at a minimum. Basically did nothing, didn't really have any effect. Then I got diagnosed with bacterial urethritis, put on antibiotics for about a week. That didn't help, so went back. So they gave me stronger antibiotics. That didn't help. So this is the point where the GP said, I've got a good private urologist if you want to see him. And I was like, yes, please, because the pain was insane at this point. And so I went to see him, had the prostate exam, no inflammation as far as he could tell. But anyway, then I got diagnosed with bacterial prostatitis. In terms of, it wasn't a set in stone diagnosis. It was kind of like, this is probably what it is. So that was when I was then put on my 3rd course of antibiotics. That was 2 weeks. And he said, go away, take these, see if you feel better. There was a slight relief after about a week, which I think we put down to the anti-inflammatory effect that some antibiotics can have. That was possibly one of the most demoralizing things, because you start to get slightly better, and then after about 2-3 days, everything's worse again, except it's worse than it was before, because you thought you were coming out of it and then you're thrown back down. So at this point, we're probably 3 months into significant pain every day with no relief. Then I go back and say, look, the antibiotics aren't working. It's like, okay, we'll do a cystoptomy, whatever it is, and we'll get you booked in for that. And also to do a prostate massage to get the cultures, and then we can send them off to the lab so we can target the bacteria properly. So at this point, I go into hospital, I have the operation. They gave me lots of morphine, so that was the only upside really from it. And for what it's worth, I mean, the operation was absolutely fine. The pain afterwards was fairly non-existent, to be honest. It probably, as I said, put it down for the morphine. And I did, for a couple of days, I did feel better. I wasn't 100%, but I definitely felt better. Now, I mean, what I put that down to, I don't know. I mean, potentially like being pumped full of painkillers, who knows? I mean, there's one thing taking paracetamol and ibuprofen, there's another thing getting pumped full of morphine. So, and they send off the cultures. At this point, when I came out, they put me on an antibiotic IV drip whilst I was in surgery. So I didn't have to take anything after coming out of surgery. They sent off the cultures to the lab 3 days or so after the surgery. I started to feel worse again, and then worse and worse and worse. And then I felt worse than I had done for the last sort of month or so. At this point, I think a lot of it was, I was getting pretty close to giving up because I had multiple diagnoses and nothing was helping. And then this would be probably about the time that I started Googling things. Well, I mean, obviously I've been Googling before, but this is when I made the fatal error of joining the CPS Facebook group, which was, to be honest, to this day, one of the most upsetting things I've ever seen, to see so many people who had clearly just given up. So that was a real shame, very, very bad, because you need, like, we'll get on to that, but if you don't have the positivity, you're not getting through it. You need to have that. And forums don't help with that. People are, generally speaking, very negative, and people like to talk about negative stuff. They don't come back when it's better. I have been on Reddit a couple of times and actually been like, it gets better, guys. But in any case, then yes, I came out of surgery. Obviously, I was then off the antibiotics, so the anti-inflammatory effects started to die down, the pain started to get worse. I saw my urologist a couple of weeks later. Really, I mean, I remember I got to the hospital for the meeting and I sat in the car for about 5 minutes because I was just getting myself ready, because I was like, I don't know what the fuck I'm going to do. Excuse my French. I don't know what I'm going to do. If he turns around and goes, here's some more antibiotics, I was in an incredibly bad place mentally. I had no idea what I was doing with my life. I'd had one hell of a toxic relationship for multiple years, all a very, very bad social time. It was not a good period. And so anyway, I go in, sit down, talking to him. I won't mention names, but it is worth noting that this is, as a private urologist, one of the best in the country, confirmed by multiple other people. And that's not to shame a doctor. It's just to say that even the people at the top of the medical system, they don't know how to deal with it properly. And then, so we sit down and we're talking. I would have been 20 at this point. And he goes, we got the results back. There's a small amount of bacteria there. Clearly at this point, I could tell that he wasn't convinced that there was enough bacteria there for this to really be treated with antibiotics. In any case, obviously, doing what doctors do, let's give you some stronger antibiotics. I was very lucky that I've never badly reacted to antibiotics. I've heard a lot of stories of people who it's really done some bad stuff. I can't remember the actual ones I was put on, but it was the strongest stuff they had. Because the idea was that because it's so deeply the bacteria is allegedly so deep into the prostate that we need to use incredibly strong antibiotics. So he gives me that, and then that's when I get diagnosed with chronic bacterial prostatitis. That hit hard. That was painful to hear. And I remember I said to him, on the edge of tears, I said, obviously you've said chronic. So is this something that isn't curable? Is this something I'm going to have to live with for the rest of my life? Am I going to be in pain for the rest of my life? And he looks me in the eye and he goes, we can try this course of antibiotics, but at this point, given the way that you've responded, the likelihood is, yes, this is now a management, not something that we can cure. So to put that into perspective, you think, okay, so you're a 20-year-old man, effectively everything around you is not worked. It's been very unfortunate. You haven't really enjoyed your teenage years for a lot of reasons. You can't enjoy having sex. At the same time, like, I've always had a very strong paternal and family drive. I come from a big family, so you start thinking, well, I can't have kids, and etc. Because even if it doesn't affect fertility, it's like, well, if I don't want to have sex, you know, it's like, okay, I could have sex once to make someone pregnant, but you're not going to have a happy relationship. And that just sort of sent me spiraling really fast, really fast. I came out, sat in my car, cried, because I was like, what on earth am I going to do in my life now? I'm going to be in pain for the rest of my life. I mean, this is excruciating pain that no painkillers made any difference to. So it's not even like, oh, fine, I'll just take painkillers for the rest of my life, die at 40 from liver and kidney failure. It's like, nope, you can't even get away from it. So then I start spiraling very quickly. The sort of ground fell out from beneath my feet. I had nothing to sort of support me. I had anything that I wanted to live for is now gone, because the idea of constant pain all of the time. And then the whole idea, the thoughts of suicide crept in very quickly, because it's like, I mean, if you look at it, to be honest, even now I say the same thing, that if that was it for the rest of my life, if that was how I would feel for the rest of my life, then there is no way I would have managed another 6 months, if that. 6 months, if that. I mean, you've got nothing to live for and the pain doesn't go away. What's the point? I mean, it's unfortunate, like, life's precious, but that's not a life worth living. And so, yeah, then basically started to spiral harder and harder. And then about, I think 2 weeks later was when I finished that antibiotics course. So that is now number 5 or 6. So I'd effectively been on antibiotics for 4 months straight. And they didn't work. Shock horror. And that was when I went to see my mother, and I was like, I'm in a bad way now. Like, I'm in a really bad way, and I have no clue how to get out of this. And she was like, yeah, okay, we'll talk about it. Well, about 5 minutes later, she realized that I was like, no, like, this is very serious. At which point she was like, you need to go see, you need proper help now. And so that's when I went to find a psychiatrist. That was my first step. Within that week, I also came across your website, Karl, and shot you an email. And then I guess that week was the start of the recovery. So after 4 months, and I suppose the next questions we'll get into the rest of the story, won't we, in terms of getting better and all of that.
Yeah, thank you so much, Markus. And just sitting back and hearing your story once again, and everywhere you've been, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, call it what you want. But yeah, thank you so much for your openness and for your honesty there as well. I know so many men who are hearing and watching this are resonating with what you're saying in terms of feelings of desperation, feeling in lowest possible points ever, and not really knowing where to turn, especially after having been, as you said, to leading urologists, leading specialists, being given the best possible care in the form of a tablet,
yeah,
which is very limiting and not exactly progressive. So yeah, what kind of 3 key elements do you feel were major in your recovery?
Well, so I think the biggest one, I mean, there are so many, but the biggest one is, there's a lot of stuff in life where you can pull your socks up and you can watch some YouTube videos, and you can, you can have your best mate give you a slap on the back and go, come on, you can pull through this. There's a lot of stuff that'll work. This is not something you can get through without proper help on your own. I just don't think it is. I mean, I can only speak for myself and what other people have said about me personally. I'm an incredibly resilient person. I quite literally work myself to the bone, hence why I'm all pale and looking completely shattered because I've been at my desk since 6 o'clock this morning. And if there's something I want in life, I will work unbelievably hard to get it. This was not something I could do on my own. There is no way. I think you need a team of people around you. Obviously, I'm somewhat biased, haven't been through the process, but Karl, you are the guy. If it wasn't for you, it wouldn't have been cured. There's no way. Then get a psychiatrist. That's the other thing I'd say, is that there seems to be a lot of evidence that this is a physio-psychological disorder. Certainly was for me. So yeah, get that. Be open with friends and family. I mean, you don't have to have perfect friends or perfect family. As long as you have one person you can speak to. One of the things I jotted down on my notes last night was, you would be unbelievably amazed how many people, men and women, have had or have all kinds of problems downstairs. It's something people don't talk about. I remember, I don't know what the exact figure was, but there was a study done in America, and the amount of men who go into ER every year with what appears to be some form of pelvic pain, which obviously can't be diagnosed because it's something to do with the medical code in the American system or something like that. I mean, it's insane. It's insane. So talk to people, because people experience it. I mean, all of my friends and family at some point in their life have had some weird pain down there that they can't understand, and sometimes it's been longer and sometimes it's been shorter. So yeah, I think the big one is get the right team, get the right people, reach out, talk to people. You're going to find it will seem, if I say it's a 4-month process, which it was for me, it could be longer, it could be shorter. Obviously, everyone's different. But I can tell you for a fact that if someone had said to me at that beginning point that it was going to take 4 or 5 months to be better, I would have gone, "You're mental. That's insanely long." What I say to that is, it's like, well, you get better or you die. So you might as well start getting better. Or yeah, maybe not how they'd say, but nonetheless, I mean, at least you say how people watching it may resonate. That's how I felt. It was this goes away and I get better, or I call it a day. There's no living with it. Isn't a, it's not really an option. So yeah, get the right team. You're going to need positivity around you. You're really going to need positivity around you, and you're going to need people to effectively be able to talk to and show you that there is light at the end of that tunnel, because it gets very dark very, very quickly. So that would be one, get the right team. Kind of like 1A, I would say, with the psychiatrist, I found that antidepressants helped me hugely. I don't jump into them. I don't think anyone should jump into really any form of medication. And obviously doctors will do, and you have the conversation and they'll assess you, correctly. But what I will say is that, at least for me personally, the stigma around antidepressants is a load of bollocks. They don't work for everyone. I'm aware of that. There are so many different types which do different things for different people. It was absolutely crucial in my recovery, both mentally and physically. So I would just like to say that, because I had a lot of people around me who said don't go on antidepressants, and I was very scared to do it, and it would have been a completely different story if I hadn't. So I put that out there. 2, don't go online looking for people's stories unless it is testimonies from Karl's website. Okay, humans, you can look into psychology of this. We love negative stuff. We just gravitate towards it. And so it's very easy to end up in a hole down in Reddit or Facebook or whatever. It is just the worst thing you could possibly do, because all you see is the negative side. All you see is the people who haven't managed to get out the other end, and that is because they've had the wrong treatment, they've had the wrong care, they're not particularly fortunate with the people around them. That is not because there are people who aren't curable. That's just not the case. So yeah, don't go on Facebook or Reddit. That's what I'd say. And then number 3, it's just so many. Crucial to, I'm thinking subjectively crucial to mine. Understand it's incredibly holistic. You know, there's not one thing. There's not a magic pill. We're sold in this society that there's a magic pill. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't particularly really have an issue with Big Pharma. I'm not a communist. But I think, as we've all seen in the last few years, they can be dodgy. Antibiotics, I'm not a doctor, but I've seen, I've read, I've heard, they're not the one. Don't chase that dragon, I'd say. By all means, if you want to try some for a bit, fine, but they're not very good for you. But anyway, it's incredibly holistic. You're going to have to work hard. You're going to have to exercise. You're going to have to stretch. You're going to have to do your therapy. You're going to have to talk to people. You're going to have to, work with Karl. You're going to have to work with your doctors. You're going to have to go into your life and work out what on earth is going on and why your body and your mind are not happy. And then you're going to have to work hard to fix it. There's no point blowing smoke up anyone's arse. It's going to take work, The likelihood is that if you're someone like me and it's been on and off for a long time, and then you've got to the point where now you can't deal with it, which I think is probably quite common, because God knows that's what us men do. So I'm sure it'll be fine. I'm sure it'll be fine. I'm sure it'll be fine. It's not fine. Better deal with this now. If it's taken years and years of building up to get there, you can't click your fingers and make it go away. It's going to take time. So what I'd say is understand that it's going to take a holistic approach. There is definitely no one size fits all. There's no magic pill. But I never thought I'd get better. I am now, I'm near on a year basically without any symptoms, any pain. I lived with it for effectively 9 years. The worst flare-up was 6 months of basically constant pain on and off towards the last couple months. I never thought I could get better. The medical institutions said I was never going to get better. I didn't believe it. I did not believe that I could pull myself out of it, and I didn't pull myself out of it. I worked with a team, and together, we all got through it. But I guess number 3, the third most crucial thing to my recovery, getting my mindset in a place where I thought I managed to tell myself and believe that yes, you can pull through it. Once you've done that, once you get to the point where you really think, you really believe you can come out the other side, you'll come out the other side. It's just a case of time. So I say those are my 3.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much, Markus. What a really wonderful reflection on things that did work, things that didn't work. Your openness and honesty is really genuinely appreciated. I think what's been really telling for me is just how raw you're prepared to be, as in telling us what's happened for you, the rawness of your experience and the ups and downs and the nature of actually saying, you know what, I can't do this by myself. I need help. I want help. And the only way I'm going to get that is by talking about it and by being open to friends and family, people around me, seeking specialist help and looking beyond the options that have been given to you initially. So kudos to you. You've got to do the hard graft yourself, as you rightly said. It's not, so no one's going to present this to you on a silver platter with white gloves on. You have to put in the hard graft and effort yourself. It doesn't come that easy.
Very true.
If you were to, let's do a Back to the Future type scenario here. Let's send yourself back in time. Markus, in 2022, what would you say to your former self, maybe even your teenage self? What message would you give to yourself?
Well, it's an interesting one, because I suppose there's two. It depends on the time, really, because there's two me's that we could talk about here. One is sort of 13, 14-year-old Markus. Christ, would I have a lot to say to him. The first would be don't chase girls, but that's not particularly relevant to this situation. Or maybe the pelvic plane's a blessing in disguise. You probably do with a few less women in your life at this point. But that is silly. But I'd say to that Markus, which could be, I suppose, if we're relating it to other people who are, a year down and a year or two in, and it's happening every now and then. Maybe you're watching this and it's because you're in a little bit of a flare up and you don't really know what's going on, and you're lucky enough to have come across it before going through the doctor system. I would say at that point, pull your fucking socks up and sort it out now. Okay, don't let it get worse. Don't let it get worse. Don't neglect your body. The high likelihood is, if there is some pain there is something that you're doing that isn't right. So fix it now, and get on top of it before it gets to the point where your body's literally having to quite literally scream at you to say something's wrong. That's what I'd say to my 13, 14-year-old self. What would I say to myself, say, a month into the big flare up when I was 19, 20? I'd say, well, the first thing I'd say is you're going to pull through this, and you will be fine, and you will come out the other end. I don't know who originally said it, but one of our sort of family quotes that we say a lot is, well, specifically me and my old man, is that everything's okay in the end, and if it's not okay, then it's not the end. And I think we could all remember that a bit more than we do, because things can seem incredibly overwhelming, especially something like this. But it's fixable, And so I guess that's what I say. I'd be like, it's not the end yet. You've got a big old life ahead of you, and you can sort this. You just got to believe,
It's fantastic. Lovely reflections there. And I think it's so difficult, isn't it, to see the wood from the trees when you're in the thick of it. It's very difficult to even throw the line out and kind of even consider a future without pain when it is just everything all the time. Is there, so thank you again, Markus, a raw, honest, very down to earth, pull your socks up, sort it, don't let it linger. I mean, say it how it is, mate. That is a really clear and blunt message, but it's right. We're so good at just, maybe it will pass, or maybe it's nothing. As men, we're very good at dithering and not pulling our socks up, and not, especially when it comes to health. I mean, particularly around health. So pull your health socks up. Be honest and open with yourself. You're not a failure. There's nothing to be shamed about. It is time to bring action upon this, and that's what's going to get you out of this.
Yeah. For sure.
Final thing, if you haven't already, and there's so many messages you could give to someone who's currently going through this, if there is something else you'd like to add, just for anyone who's watching this who is going through things and they're really, really uncertain, any words of wisdom, anything to finish off with?
Get the right team, and even if Karl charged £1,000 an hour, it would still be worth it. That's what I'd say.
Oh, that's very kind of you. Thank you, Markus.
Yeah.
But I won't be charging that price, but getting the right team around you, seeking the right advice, not looking at Reddit, not looking at Facebook.
Yeah,
the way forward.
You know, find the crack of light at the end of the tunnel and chase that. If you want to chase something, find the light and chase it. Find positive people, positive situations, eat well, exercise, sleep well, you know, educate yourself, find a reason to get up in the morning. I think that would be one of the big ones, you know. The pain will go away. You need to think about what life's going to be like after it, because that's what's going to keep you going. One of the things I did, I mean, I have vision boards all over my desk, falling out my arse, and I find it's a hugely helpful thing for me. One of the things that I did in the thick of the pain was I had a note on my phone, and it was titled "What I'll Do When I'm Better." You know, travel, meet people, go and have lots of sex. Turns out I didn't do that, because that's just not really who I am. I want to get married and have children basically now. It's very strange. But yeah, I'd say do that. Look for the light at the end of the tunnel. And if at the moment that you're watching this, you can't see the light, create the light, because it's there. The tunnel ends. Get the right team, work out where you want to be, and sort yourself out, because it's doable. And yes, it's hard work, but I tell you what, when that pain starts to go, you know, if whoever's watching this, if you're sat there and you're like, you've just been to a pee before you've watched this, and you're really dying for a piss, or you know, you've just had sex and you're sat watching it in the middle of the night because you're in so much pain, you don't want to talk to your partner about it or whatever. If that's the case, I tell you what, that first time you wake up and you have your morning pee and you feel fully emptied, that's a feeling. The first time you have sex and you can stay lying next to your partner and be able to cuddle and not be in pain, that's one hell of a feeling. When you can sit at your desk for more than half an hour without needing to go to the loo, when you're not worried about going out, you can meet people, you can talk to people. That is something which is going to happen again, and it's priceless. So
what an advocate. I mean, I genuinely mean that. What an absolute advocate. I've had tingles running up and down my spine from so much of what you've been saying in those final comments. Give yourself a reason to get up in the morning. And if you can't see any light, then make some light for you. Start to create that crack at the end of the tunnel. Absolutely priceless. Markus, you've been a legend, as always. Thank you so much for your words, for your wisdom, for your input, for your insight, and for working together to get you to where you want to be right now. Kudos to you, mate.
Thank you, mate. Thank you.